Okay, thank you to Rod for coming on. That was a blast. Great to hear his perspective on everything. And now let's get into the reunion itself. But really quickly before that, we were talking about the men of Southern Charm and who they're dating. Now, a listener of the show wrote in today, this morning, and I asked if I could share this, and they said yes. And they write, for any Southern Charm fans curious about confirming Shep's status, my husband is at a golf resort right now, and Shep is there with a hot blonde. Shep is back on the horse. And hot blonde, remember, we find out through the course of the reunion and Watch What Happens Live, their appearance the other night, that he is not dating Molly. So this is a different hot blonde. And it would be great if that message also said, I could tell they were dating because she was wearing 3 shark tooth necklaces. Also, Shep, man, lean into it, dude. If you don't come out with your own line of Shep's shark tooth necklaces, what are we even doing here? I would buy a shark tooth necklace just to have in my reality show museum. Are you kidding me? That's like printing money, man. We would all buy a shark tooth. Probably just me. Okay. So we have that. But then we got also information that Craig Conover, he's not sitting around. Like Carl Radke is making a big point on Summer House to let us know he has not dated or had sex with anybody in a year. He wanted to take time to heal, get over his anger and his feelings. And Craig is not doing that, which is totally his right. He is dating somebody else. And we found out on Watch What Happens Live on Thursday that he let us know. He filled us in a little bit. So Andy Cohen asked on Watch What Happens Live if he was dating anyone, and Conover responded with his sly smile. And he said, I am. And he didn't give his name, but he said, I've been reminded that the universe works in crazy ways, but everything happens for a reason. Now, through Dumois, we know the name of this lady. Her name is Natalie Buffett or Buffett, Buffett, and she was in the audience for Watch What Happens Live that night. And today I saw a photo of both of them at the Charleston airport, and Craig was wearing a hoodie with the hoodie pulled over his head, so it like went down to his forehead, like, nobody will realize it's me, Craig Conover. And this Natalie girl was walking in front of him, but paparazzi or some Bravo celebrity paparazzi got a snap of them. And that's great. So she is out there potentially enjoying Craig's backyard, his pool and his garden, and like enjoying koozie life. And I hope she gets used to that. But she has a really interesting dating resume as well. So Natalie, she dated the Dallas Cowboys quarterback Dak Prescott. Dak or Dax. Anyways, I'm not, I just looked Dallas Cowboys up and it turns out they are a football team. Very interesting. And I believe he has like a $250 million contract. So he's very wealthy. And Craig, he has a pillow empire. So probably wealthy, probably not as wealthy as 250 million, but you never know where we're going to go from here. She is, they dated for 2 years. They made it Instagram official in 2020 and they split in 2022. And if you do the math, I believe we're in 2025 right now. So that's like a 3-year difference. So that's plenty of time to heal from Dak or Dax, whatever, however you say his name, into Craig. Now she is 27 years old. She holds a degree in civil engineering from Southern Methodist University. And she currently works as the director of content creation for the home fitness company Oxfit, OXE. She has around 76,000 Instagram followers. This is as of a couple days ago, so I'm sure that number is going to get bigger because I think a lot of the Bravo celebrity audience, for some reason, I don't do this, but people will just go follow like, oh, you're banging Craig? I'll follow you. I've seen that happen before. I'm fine to be a lurker, but it also says that she is a certified yoga instructor. So this is great. If like Craig kind of learned learned how to gossip better maybe through Paige, even though Craig was a pretty good gossip before, he maybe got a little bit better, more of a sense of humor maybe through Paige. And maybe now we can expect him to like get into his yogi aesthetic. So we will see. Also, I think if you have to date anybody, my big question to any cast member is if you date somebody new, do you have to say, hey, part of my life is being on this show, so you need to be okay with being on this show? Because Austin, we don't know his current relationship status with Natalie. Was that her name? But we saw her like a couple brief times. But I'm not a big fan of protecting your relationship. I mean, usually I will say that is in a real world, a very healthy way to go about things is to protect your relationship. But you are in reality television. And to me, that is a big no bueno. You got to share it all. You got to mention it all, as Bethany Frankel potentially once said. So that was a little bit of the romance recap. Shep's with a hot blonde at some golf thing today. Craig's probably in his backyard with Natalie Buffett. And is Natalie Buffett any relation to Jimmy Buffett? I love Jimmy Buffett. I mean, Jimmy Buffett, rest in peace. Just seemed like a cool, nice guy. Who knows? And then you got Craig, Shep, and then Austin is potentially with Natalie. Who's Whitney dating? Whitney really skirts that line. He's one of the producers of the show since the very beginning, and he used to show more about his dating life. Like, remember that guitar playing scene? Oh, it was so, I forgot was that second or third season? It was so embarrassing. No offense to Whitney, but it was a rough watch because I think she was like a Swedish supermodel or something. And it was rough. It was rough. But listen, I want more Whitney, and you don't have to like Whitney to want more Whitney on the show. Do you get my drift? Okay, so anyways, we go on to this reunion and we get the normal thing of everybody walking in. People are asking each other if they're nervous. Venita is nervous to see JT. Craig says, listen, Charleston is too small of a town to hold grudges. He also says, very revealing, he says, I hate to wear underwear. And that should be the headline for this entire reunion. Craig Conover hates to wear undies. This guy loves to free ball. God, I hate wearing underwear. God, I hate underwear. Ugh. But everybody seems like kind of ready to go, and we'll see what happens. So everybody's coming out on stage, and they save JT for last. I love when Craig comes out and he does a twirl in his tuxedo. He's like, look at me, I feel like a pretty girl. I love all these tuxedo looks, but I will say when they sit down, do you notice like the bottom of their shirt kind of has like an extra ruffle before it hits the pants? I don't know if this is a new look, but I don't like it. Even Andy was dealing with this problem. I don't know if it's a problem. I don't know. I was like, no, we can tuck this in just a little bit more. JT is the final one that comes out, and Rod goes, Austin, say hi to JT. It was great. So everybody's staring at each other intensely, and mainly JT. There's like a silence when JT comes out there. And on the right side of Andy, we have Venita, JT, Sally, and Austin. And no, so sorry. Yeah, Austin, Molly, and then Shep, right? Oh, sorry, JT isn't the last one to come out. Madison is. And Madison comes out with a sack of potatoes stuffed in her belly, which actually we come to find out that is her baby. And everybody's like, no way, what? Everybody's gasping. Everybody's like, I don't believe you. And Austin's like, stop, get out of town. But it actually was a really sweet moment, and it shows how far Austin and Madison have come from the good old days of Madison to, oh my God, you're pregnant. That's awesome. So the other couch is like stock full. And then on the left side of Andy, we got Craig next to Andy. We got Venita. We've got we've got Rodrigo, and we've got Madison, right? Venita runs up to hug Madison. So we have this big moment. It's very cute, actually. So we start the reunion, and he's just talking about the Peter Pans of the group, referring to the men. We're congratulating Madison once again on the pregnancy and how she had to keep it a secret. And Rod, in our interview, even said he suspected it when they hung out, but she had done like Dry January or Hard 75. So she thought it was going to be, she thought she kept the secret, right? And remember, I believe Madison did a sponsorship as well, just like Lindsay Hubbard did. So get your bag, girl. We love it. Now, Andy's going around saying hey to everybody here today. Like, Venita, are you excited to see JT? And she says, no, I'm not. Hey, Shep, great to see you. And he's like, did you bring me a shark tooth necklace? And Shep's like, I think I can make it happen, yeah. But Shep, you blew it because you didn't bring him a shark tooth necklace when you went to watch What Happens Live. He said he wanted one, dude. You make sure you always have one handy. In fact, Shep should just like carry shark tooth necklaces with him. And if he meets a special someone, he could immediately give them a shark tooth necklace. Andy's like, JT, thank you for joining us. How are you feeling about being here today? And he's like, I feel great. I feel it's good to see everybody. And Andy's like, you quit the show last time I saw you. And he's like, yeah, my inner bitch had a moment. It did. Rodrigo laughs about that. But I had to tell that inner bitch to quiet down. And Sally's like, your inner bitch comes out a lot, JT. And then he asks JT, when was the last time you and Venita spoke? And he's like, well, how long has it been, Venita? And Venita literally hits with October 28th. I'm shocked there wasn't a time in there. October 28th, 2:41 p.m. And Andy even teases her, can you be more specific? But JT goes, it's good to see you, Venita. And Venita goes, is it? Is it? Yeah, okay. So tension. Austin, there's a shot of Austin just exhaling like, oh, man. Oh, man. Hey, Leva, Andy says. Are you excited to get a break from those kooks over at Republic on Southern Hospitality? Hey, Rodrigo, congratulations. I heard you got engaged recently, Andy says. And Rod says, yes, I did. And these guys have been together for 10 years. And then he's like, hey, Molly, what's it like to have sex with Shep? He doesn't ask that, but I wish he did. So he says, Sally, we are popping your reunion cherry as well. Everybody's laughing, and he asked, did Madison give you any advice? And Sally says, just be myself. Just be myself. And then Andy says, hey, Pookie, in regards to Austin, and asks how Audrey, his girlfriend, is doing. And she says she's great. So they are still together, right? That is information. They are still together, and they are doing great. So we need to see more of Audrey in season 11. They also tease Austin about having names like Boo Boo for his girlfriends. Then he says hi to Taylor Ann Green. Andy uses her full name. Asks how you pronounce Gaston, or Gaston, and it's just Gaston, right? And then he gets to Craig. He says, how are you? And Andy's like, you're smiling, Craig, because Craig has a big shit-eating grin on his face. And he goes, yeah, I think I do that with that like nervous energy. I'm a nervous smiler. And Andy goes, the Bravo sphere was rocked with the news of your breakup to Paige. And we caught you in the blindsided moment of this. And then they cut to picking back up cameras on that final scene that we saw on the finale, right? And Craig says, listen, like if I saw a red flag, I didn't know. And all of a sudden when he says this about Paige, like a prop falls in front of them. And everybody's like, what? You hear like metal clanging? And everybody's like, well, that's a red flag right there. And everybody like, how weird is that? That means there are ghosts, and in the afterlife, they are potentially Team Paige. That's what that means, right? This is the Conjuring all over again. So Craig continues saying, I will say that when we were together in private, Paige and I, is what I based our relationship off of. There weren't signs. And there's some reaction shots of in the crowd. Listen, this is something we can debate till the end of the world. I think there were signs, but I think so when you're in something so deeply, you will not see the obvious in your face because I think you are so attached to the fairy tale of something that you will ignore any red signs. You can notice them in your friends. You can notice what you don't like about Austin or about Shep or about Leva, and on, but you will not see that in your own life. I feel like 9 times out of 10, that is the case. Now, Andy goes, Austin and Shep, you said you did not hear the news from your friend Craig. And Shep goes, that's right, Andy. I was in Canawan, down in the Grenadines. Like, did we know? Okay, cool, man. I was fucking here in Los Angeles. That's where I was about to get sinus surgery. Andy, I was in Canawan, down in the Grenadines. We've all been there. That's where breakup news travels. It totally doesn't matter, but Shep does the opposite of like famous person name dropping. He name drops like countries and places to visit. But I guess Rodrigo sent Shep a DM and Shep says, it rocked me, dude. It rocked me. I had no idea. And then he goes, and then you told Austin. And Shep's like, no. Austin goes, no, Craig and I, we were together. We were about to do a live podcast. And I just knew right because his energy prior to the show was very inward. And Craig's like, yeah, because she called me and broke up with me after Thanksgiving. And when Austin and I were out to do a live show, actually. And I texted Austin eventually. You were like, when are you and Paige going to London? And I was like, we didn't go to London. And Austin goes, well, I was kind of goading you, Craig, because I knew and I just wanted you to say it to me. I love the way they play games within their little friendship, like their little bromance. And I'm not really joking. I mean, this is like so typical guy behavior. Is like, I want to save my friend's pride. So I'm just going to ask very specific questions in hopes that he will tell me information that I already know. And he goes, Craig, two things. You just said that she broke up with you the night that you were doing this live show after Thanksgiving, but you told me on Watch What Happens Live, Craig, that you were still together. And we flash back to that moment on Watch What Happens Live where he's still acting like he is with Paige, right? And Andy's like, do you feel like you were telling the truth then? Or were you silent, Craig, or silenced? And we cut to our first break. We cut to our first break of the Southern Charm reunion. So Andy's like, do you feel like you were telling the truth or not? And Craig's thinking about this. And he's like, after a 3-year relationship, when a girl has asked you to buy her an engagement ring, and you did, and asked you to move to New York, and you agreed to move to New York, when you just get a phone call after spending a great Thanksgiving weekend with her, and then like she was like, we'll talk about it. So like, I didn't think it was real. And after Watch What Happens Live, I went to her apartment and just be like, so what's happening? And she was like, I'm probably making the worst mistake of my life, but I need to go find myself. Rodrigo has a shot of Rodrigo's face of like, ooh. And then Craig continues. And then I asked her like, well, what do you want me to do with the ring? And she was like, well, keep it. Maybe we'll get married at BravoCon. And I was like, and everybody has like these shocked faces like, what? Like who would ever get married at BravoCon? Don't knock it until you try it, folks. Listen, I think a lot of things, and maybe this is another thing when you're in so deep. My view of Paige is she says most things with a sarcastic bent. And I feel like this is a sarcastic comment that Craig is almost postulating that is serious, because I think there is no way in hell that Paige would ever agree to get married at BravoCon. Right? And also, how much would that cost the fans to buy an additional ticket for that? Because they would find a way to make you pay extra to watch the vows of Craig and Paige. But this sounds like that breakup where, I don't know, obviously, just think about your own breakups in your life and think about like the times you've broken up with somebody as opposed to when you've been broken up with. And it's a really tough situation for both parties. And, you know, I don't want to demonize Craig and I don't want to demonize Paige. There seems to be a lot of miscommunication and a lot of misunderstanding of what each other's intent was. We've talked about this ad nauseum, is that we should make it normal. It should be normalized that people change. If we were to say people are to stay the same from the beginning you start a relationship until the end, that wouldn't be any sort of relationship, right? Aren't we supposed to, in some ways, inspire our partners, or, you know, our partners inspire us to be better in some ways? You know, and it just felt like, yeah, Paige did want to go find herself. But even more than that, I think Paige already knew who she was. She was just way different than who she was at the beginning of that relationship. And yes, success or having these really hard career plans probably added to the stress of all of that. And I also do not want to make it out where Craig was doing nothing, because obviously Craig is a really busy dude too, but he's of an older age that he is wanting to slow down. He's not wanting to be out there on the road. Like, and that is just right then and there, that should be so understandable that it doesn't have to be all of this other stuff. Now, it is so fun to poke fun at, you know, from a periphery, from a distance of not knowing either of these people. But what is interesting now is that something, you know, this isn't our fault. This is like when Lisa Rinna was on Jake Shane's podcast this week and was like, the fans made it horrible for me and that's why I quit. We'll talk more about that on the Pop Culture Roundup on Monday with Sophie, because I got words for Lisa Rinna. But you know what I'm saying? It's not the fans' fault, but I will say the fans do like fan the flames and kind of make it more of an inferno. And then they like, Craig keeps talking about it. She kind of keeps talking about it, or she'll do cryptic Instagram posts where it just makes them angrier and there's no communication between the two of them. So it is just going to they're going to demonize each other more and more and more until you forget about like what was probably the beautiful aspect of their relationship that we didn't get to see. Am I just being too soft? I mean, maybe, but I like being soft. Well, I mean, I don't love it. I don't love my belly softness, but I don't mind saying like, man, you get to a certain age and you realize how many fucking weird things that we all do. And it is so wild that relationships really, for as much benefit as they have for all of us, it is also one of the biggest things that really just floor us and hurt us and shape us. And it is so hard to break free from the pain of these things. So he's saying, even Andy's like, maybe we'll get married at BravoCon? And they're like, well, that's a lot of mixed signals. And then Andy goes, that's a good idea though, right? Craig's like, again, this isn't like we broke up and then it was over and I moved on with my life. We'd been planning our life together for 3 years. And she fantasized about fantasies and stuff like that. And then they flash back to that like time when they visited the, like baby goats. There's not on Severance, but like the baby animals. And Craig's like, I have been in a weird place throughout December, which we continued to talk throughout December. And 2 days before New Year, she texted me and said, I just want you to know, like, I talk about it on my podcast that we're no longer together. And then all of a sudden, all my stuff just showed up on my porch one day. Like, then it became real. Oh my God, wouldn't it have been amazing if Paige did a sponsored post about moving all of Craig's stuff of like, when you're looking to break up, go with Roadway Movers. They're a one-stop to get. Sorry. Now that would be dark, you guys. Paige didn't do that. Paige didn't do a sponsored post about moving. Because you think about it, I'm like, how much stuff did Craig have over there? And that probably was pretty expensive, right? And Annie goes, well, I guess the reason that I glommed onto you saying that is that you kind of definitively said Paige called me and broke up with me. And Craig's like, to be fair, she broke up with me on the phone call by saying, I think we need to break up. And I'm saying I didn't receive it like that, which is kind of funny too, because it kind of goes into that old, like the way men are of like, women said something and I just didn't believe it because you know how women are. You can't trust these women. So I just didn't believe it. She was crazy talking. Andy says, if you're in Toronto with your buddy Austin, Craig, it's an interesting choice that you chose not to share that with him. And we flash back again to that final scene. And Craig goes, I knew if I told Austin, the world would know. This guy's worse than Perez Hilton over here. This guy would leak it to all the blogs, just like they talk about in Atlanta. But is Austin that big of a gossip? Because Craig seems to be a gossip. And I mean that as a compliment. But Austin goes, I think that's a bit harsh, but I understood. And Craig's like, I was freaking out. Like this became really real. If everyone starts talking about it. So that's also another, like kind of a psychological thing of he didn't want it to be real. So why was he going to tell all of his close people? Because then it makes it real. He wanted to live in this fantasy land of she's going to change her mind, right? Austin says, well, it was pretty obvious to me that Craig was keeping me like a little bit at bay. And so I'm not upset at Craig, Austin says. It's saddening a bit that he didn't think he could tell me, but we could have talked and like he could have cried to me. Like, by the way, when he says he could have cried to me, I'm like, pick cameras back up now. I want a crying scene of Craig to Austin. And like, to me, that's what makes these shows interesting is watching, especially when you break stereotypes of tough men. And I would say the men of Southern Charm at its core, they think they are strong men. And by the way, being weak doesn't mean you aren't strong, but I think sometimes we have a false perception of what makes a man strong. And I would love to break those perceptions because you can tell that all of these men, for how many notches they have on their belt, they are still so much more sensitive than the women of Southern Charm. Maybe not Venita this season, but who knows, right? Shep goes, my biggest concern was I'm sure Craig is getting inundated at this moment with this public news. So I thought it was important to send a supportive message, Andy, without any expectations. And Craig's like, listen, I have never felt more supported in my life. Says the man who doesn't even like to wear underwear. This man isn't used to support, even in his crotch area. But he says everybody on this cast supported him. And that's why, once again, I am calling for a cage match between the cast of Summer House and Southern Charm. Now, Southern Charm seem to have all rallied around Craig. The cast of Summer House have all rallied around Paige. Now, some of the support Paige is getting is because literally Jesse Solomon wants to sleep with her, as well as Sierra and the rest of the women of Summer House. But that is still support. But he says, yeah, the thousands of people that watch the show, he felt so much support. And Craig says so many people related to it. So many people are like, I know you just don't want to hear it, but it takes time. So Craig says it was a shared experience, which was really special and helped me feel less alone. And Andy's like, wow, what a pussy. No, it's great. No, it's great. I love that kind of support, right? And then Andy's like, Madison, how did you find out? And she said online, and I reached out to Craig immediately. And I think Craig has handled it very well, Madison says. I mean, considering he was madly in love. And it's always best to find out now than later down the road. And Craig's like, that's why it was confusing. Because then she said, we've chosen to break up, but it was mutual and all this stuff. And I was like, it wasn't. There was nothing mutual about it. And he says, Venita, you mentioned on the Southern Charm after show and about the Craig thing. And she says, yeah, I just texted him, I support you. I know what it's like to have your heart broken. So I don't know if that was like a subtle jab at JT. And by the way, they are friendly in this scene, but on the Watch What Happens Live appearance that aired after this, Craig made the very strong, this is when you know Craig, for as much as he talks where you're like, this guy is really centered, he'll say something of like, dude, man, back off. Like he said he doesn't consider a Venita a friend anymore. And I thought that was a little bit of ridiculous. I'm just going to do a weird voice because I'm like, Craig, dude, like, just remember, like, it's really hard speaking to any sort of press about this, but he thinks that Venita spoke out against him. And I don't think it was necessarily that cut and dry, but Craig has a hard line stance. And that's why anyways, she says she knows what that feeling is like. And Andy says, I was even ringing in the new year with CNN with Anderson Cooper, and John Hamm even brought up the breakup. And Andy's like, what was it like having your breakup getting that kind of national attention? And Craig says, well, she commented on that clip and says, I've watched this a million times. Like, it's amazing. And we're just like, oh my God, we're so different. Yes, Craig, you are so different. And that's why it is good. I'm not coming down on Craig, but yes, you are so different. Yes. Do I think it's a little callous that John Hamm said something and Paige reportedly left a comment going, this is amazing? Of course. Yes, that sucks. That's not a good thing. I don't think that's cool. Like, I would hate for John Hamm to talk about any of my previous relationships. That seems like a nightmare. And it's like a real kick in the gut. But I can't speak to why Paige did that, right? But Craig's like, how is she finding fun in this? And Shep's like, yeah, pretty uncool. And Craig's like, to me, the person that she's kind of been since the breakup isn't the person that I remember dating. She seems way happier. No, Andy says, what do you mean by that? And she goes, she's fighting with people in the comments. She's starting to say mean stuff about me based on what the internet is saying. And I'm just like, well, I didn't do anything to you. I didn't do anything to you. You said on your podcast that I was like the best boyfriend you had ever had. And, we're like, I had a lot of shit that I had to work out, but like, it's been an interesting breakup to say the least. And Andy goes, Taylor, do you have any advice on how to go through a public breakup? And Taylor's like, delete all videos, memories. That's helpful. And Shep seems concerned of like, you deleted videos of me? Are you kidding me? And he's like, you have to delete all the videos? And Taylor's like, yeah, I mean, you have to get to a point where you need to move on. And I mean, I will say Apple sucks in that sense, is that they do those memory collages that they just put together without your like consent at all. And so, I mean, this happens mainly not with exes for me, but it'll be my mom. It'll be like, on this day, 7 years ago. And it's me and my mom smiling. And I'm like, fuck you, Apple. I did not want to wake up to that, even though those are nice memories to think about. But sometimes you'll wake up in this kind of different headspace where you're happy and you'll see a photo like that. And you're like, oh my God, I wish it was 7 years ago. Why did you do this? Steve Jobs, wherever you are, I hate you so much. But Rodrigo also says sex tapes, delete it. And Andy's like, Taylor Ann, did you delete all the videos of Shep? And she's like, I didn't have any pictures of him on my phone. And Shep's like, oh, they pop up on mine. I kept mine. And Taylor's like, it's not out of spite or hate. And then Shep goes, well, let me know if you need them ever. What? Oh God, don't encourage women to do things like this. Of like, when Taylor's down on her luck, like to encourage to like text Shep and like, hey bud, gonna need those photos again. Can you send a Dropbox of all our video? Like, stop, just stop. Andy says, Austin, that video of you and your boxers with Madison pops up on my phone all the time. And everybody shares a laugh. We flash back to this for the 1,000th time. This is when Madison walked in when Austin had 2 girls in his bed. This is like a baby Jesse Solomon moment. Like, Madison! And she's like, this is fucking bull. Madison! And he's trying to like push down his little semi-hard boner. He's like, what are you talking? These girls fell from my ceiling. What are you talking about? Madison! Leva goes, it literally pops up on everybody's algorithm. I mean, that is just an iconic Bravo moment that I don't mind being on the show for as much as possible. And then Andy asked the tough question, did she break up with you for a new guy, Craig? And we see Joe D'Amelio, the guy in question, his name pop up on an Entertainment Now website. And Craig says, I asked her, please just tell me, Paige, if you're with another guy, like put me out of my misery. And she said, Craig, I'm not talking or dating anyone. I'm just doing charades. I'm just doing hand signals. And then Craig goes, and then she said some crazy stuff and like, and they're like, what kind of crazy stuff? And he's like, well, it doesn't matter. It's not crazy. She was just like, why didn't you try to get me back? And I was like, I haven't tried to get you back. That's not fair. And then she was like, I think it's very clear that we both made the right decision. And I was like, we didn't. You made the decision. I would have never left. And Andy goes, I think you feel gaslit. Okay, we're going to charge $50 to Andy. That's a $50 that you owe the audience. Let's not keep using the word gaslit. We are way overusing it. It's like the word vibe. But Craig says, listen, I shouldn't have to beg somebody to be with me. That's not a relationship, right? Which is sound advice. He goes, I just wish you would have been honest with me from the beginning and none of this would be happening. I don't know. What do you guys think about that? Like honesty, like we see signals on Summer House, obviously. We don't know their private conversations, but it does seem like she was throwing out all of these things. And based on the things she was throwing out, he would respond in a way that made her more frightened. But yeah, I don't know. It's hard in a relationship for 3 years to just flat out say, I don't want to be with you. I need to move on. She eventually got there, but it's hard, right? So Andy goes, well, obviously we have a lot more to dig into on this topic, but we are going to leave it here for now. We're going to put a pin in it for now. I love when he puts a pin in something. Now we move into Madison and JT and that storyline with her husband potentially being jealous, but there is no way he was actually jealous because it was JT. And, he's like, I got to tell the truth if you're going to come at me like this, right? And she's like, I didn't say he was. She goes, I wouldn't fucking be filming with my ex, Austin. I wouldn't be on cast trips without him present ever. No jealous, crazy husband would allow that. And JT's like, I didn't call him jealous. I was just revealing what happened. And Madison's like, but do you understand that's how then it was relayed back to me as a friend? And JT is referring to Craig. And he's like, it wasn't relayed. It was butchered by Craig. I mean, Craig, this is what I'm saying, is that I don't know how much he is a liar, where people keep saying he's a liar, but he does love a yarn. He does love a good gossip. But Madison just correctly pointing out, this dude is not jealous. And I don't get jealous vibes from her husband. Like the dude's like a Greek god. My God, he even beat cancer. And she makes such a good point. If he was that type, she wouldn't be doing any of this. He's like okay with it. Okay, so now we get into the Venita JT storyline. And Venita's like, listen, JT can sometimes oversell a story, which is kind of like Craig in a sense, right? And Venita saying it wasn't meant to be aggressive. It wasn't meant to be harmful in regards to the Madison JT stuff. And Leva says there's a reason why I don't do group trips, because it gets fucking complicated sometimes, right? But it did seem like you went home and said that in regards to Craig. Leva's saying that, like, Craig, you did seem like you got in the middle of this and kind of created something that was more than it was actually at all. And JT just thought everybody was mad at him, which they were. And Craig's like, okay, let's go back to what JT said earlier. And Leva's like, you know your words, right, Craig? And Craig's like, hold on. Jesus Christ, Leva. And then Leva goes, don't gaslight me. Okay, that's a $50 charge to Leva as well. And Craig's like, I'm not gaslighting you. And then JT goes, you're gaslighting me, Craig. And Craig's like, God, Jesus Christ. Can I fucking answer it, Leva? And then Craig's like, how long does it take you to ask a question? And Leva's like, are you just going to be rude right now? No, you said more today than you did the whole season, Leva. And Leva's like, cut it out, Craig. We do know now Leva has left Southern Charm. Venita's face, we have a reaction shot of her going, zoinks, what? And JT's like, Craig, dude, just say it. Be a man. Be like, dude, I lied. And Craig's like, I am being a man. I exactly what the fuck you said times 10. And JT goes, just say, I, Craig, lied. Craig, you have lost it. And Craig's like, he keeps calling me a liar, and I didn't lie. And Leva goes, I think that the problem is, which was relayed, was like not accurate. And then it became so much bigger. That's reality TV, baby. Now Craig's doing his pouting thing where he's looking away from everybody and he has his like hand on his head. And he says, Madison, you commented on Instagram that you planned on apologizing to JT at the reunion. So you have the floor, Madison. And Madison says, listen, I was happy to hear in a scene that you said the first relationship you'd like to mend was the relationship with me. So it seems like they did have a genuine friendship. Madison says, you need to understand that my family, I will go till the ends for that, but I am sorry for taking it a little too far. And JT's like, I accept your apology. I accept your apology. I do. So we've got this one potentially worked out, but it's tenuous. It's like on its last legs potentially. But JT says, it is water under the bridge for me. I am ready if you are. And Madison just goes, Delulu. You are Delulu. Okay, so we come back, and now we are on Shep talking about his new love interest, former Miss Bahamas 2021, Scheana. And Andy's like, wow, what a slow car crash. Thank you, Andy. I love slow car crashes. I don't like to be in them, but we do clips of Shep and the freckled lips. And Andy's like, before we get into your relationship, Shep, I just want to say you really have done a full 180 from BravoCon last year. You look healthy and everybody claps. You seem present. And I'm just so happy as someone who cares about you, Andy says, that you've come out of this. And you've come out of this in a good way. And he's like, I appreciate that. Now, that is so sweet, right? I love the applause. I love the camaraderie. But also, can we call bull fucking shit? I do enjoy Shep a lot. But like, I'm sorry. BravoCon last year, which you heard Rodrigo speak about in the interview before this, he obviously was a mess. But like, I'm sorry. I mean, like, he still had messy moments. The dude was like all over the place. He like talks about doing ayahuasca. We did see him drink throughout the season. Maybe it wasn't to like level. I don't know, but I just thought it was like, are we really like, this is a participation trophy more than it is a first place trophy. But Andy says, how is your 2.0 lifestyle going? Have you cut back on drinking? And Shep's like, yeah, I did. I don't find it funny anymore. I find it horrifying if the night gets out of control. And I really, really have been better about trying to keep it on the road. And they're like, Austin, is Shep telling the truth? And Shep's like, honest to God, in the past like 6 or so months, Shep has been more of a joy to be around than I can remember. And they're like, Craig, do you find that as well? And Craig's like, Shep is way better than he was. My concern is that the risk of ending up where you don't want to be is still present. And I think if you were to stop working on yourself now, then you would end up back in that place. And Shep's like, I'm trying to do the things that I love, and whether that's maintaining friendships or travel or having sex with strangers, these are things that give me joy, and they keep me focused on things that are good for my soul. Chicken soup for Shep's soul. Woo! No, I mean, listen, I guess any step is a step, right? But like, come on. I think Craig is right, though. You've got to really kind of check yourself religiously, especially if you are getting asked to leave public events where you are a celebrity at said event. Andy's saying, viewers were surprised that you fell so hard for her, especially since you've always been a playboy, even when you were in a relationship with Taylor. Poor Taylor's on the couch. What was it about Scheana that you fell so hard for? And Craig turns to Madison and goes, her freckled lips. And Shep goes, for lack of a better word, pretty intoxicating she was. And they're like, Austin, what do you think made Scheana different from Shep than other girls? And Austin goes, well, I think he missed what he had with Taylor. He was the best version of himself when he was with Taylor, which is wild for somebody to say that also then made out with Taylor after the breakup. But that is the tangled web that the reality shows weave. Andy says, Taylor, is this uncomfortable for you to talk about? And Taylor's like, honestly, no, I don't care about that girl or that relationship. And I thought that was great. He also talks about knocking Taylor during this season when he said Scheana has a lot of things going for her and a lot of drive, which Taylor didn't. And Shep says, it was kind of petty and stupid for me to say that, and I apologize. And Taylor's like, it's okay. And Andy goes, Shep, you said this in season 2 of Southern Charm. And we flash back to season 2, and he's talking to a girl that's 22. And he's doing a shot. And he says, I will not be in my mid-40s. While he's talking to Whitney, saying, trying to hook up with girls in their 20s. I don't think. Now we know that that is not true, that he will be a guy in his 40s hooking up with a girl in his 20s. And Andy points out that Scheana is 26. You are in your 40s. And Shep goes, I probably said a lot of things that I would take back. But isn't that the case? And maybe, like, is this primarily more men talking out of their ass than women? I know you might be saying a resounding yes, but seriously, but he makes a good point that I think men and women on reality TV, if you are on reality TV over 6 years, you are going to look back because you can all pick a moment of looking back in your life where you just talked out of your ass so hard and you're like, wow, thank God that wasn't on camera. We are allowed to change, right? It is funny to see in retrospect, but we are allowed to change. The thing is, has Shep really changed or not? Shep says, can we talk for a second about this, the phenomenon of younger girls wanting older guys? Because it's happening. I'm just telling you. So Shep has done the research, you guys. It's not Shep's fault. There is a phenomenon out there of younger girls throwing themselves at older guys. When are we going to talk about this? The true problem is these younger women throwing themselves at older, insecure, dumb men. They asked Sally for her opinion. She goes, I love an older man. They are like, how old would you go? And he's like, late 40s, 50s, And she goes, yeah, I have before. I don't know. This is such a dumb conversation. They're talking about Shep's text messages and saying it was Swingers level bad. The movie Swingers with Jon Favreau and Vince Vaughn. Of just Shep putting it all out there on the table with those text messages. And then Shep goes, yeah, it was, but I love that movie. I love Swingers. And they're like, what were you thinking when you sent that, Shep? And Shep's like, I couldn't sleep, man. I woke up at 6 a.m. My mind just started spinning. And I have to say what I want to say. But I do think I could be a decent romance novelist. I don't know, man, maybe. But also, when you say things like this, like we're all laughing, Shep, write a romance novel, dude. I would buy it even if it's horrible. I don't know. I don't read a lot of romance novels, but I'm assuming most are like pretty schlocky. Dude, I would fucking love a series of romance novels told through the eyes of Shep Rose. Are you kidding me? Like, in fact, why don't we just ask ChatGPT to like write a romance novel that based on like what you know about Shep Rose? Wouldn't that be amazing? Just like that kind of male sort of chauvinist point of view. Like, young girl made him stay at this place and have sex with her repeatedly. And of course he was up to the challenge and satisfied her every time, even though he wasn't satisfied himself internally, because our man Shep had emotions, feelings. Austin says, prior to going, I think that Shep knew, and he even said to me, oh my gosh, I'm going to look like the biggest fool potentially. And then he just like writes this long thing. And while it was cringy, I was like, oh, you put it out there and, let's just see what happens. And they're talking about the freckled lips. And they're like, well, that's a powerful thing to be vulnerable. Molly says this. That's a powerful thing to be vulnerable. See, Molly, do not encourage. Like, it's okay for everybody to like sympathize, but don't encourage him. And Molly, he slept with you and you are not currently dating. Why are you like gassing him up? But she says, I don't want you to lose that vulnerability because she hurt you. Yeah. Do not let you lose your amazing vulnerability. But Shep says, hey, listen, vulnerability is a big point of mine now. Like getting your heart broken, you can turn that into something useful. You can turn that into a business. It's good to be humbled, Shep says. And it's good to have like slapped around a little bit. And Andy says, there's a part of me that's like, wow, is Shep kind of getting a taste of his own medicine here? And everybody's like, oh yeah. And Andy's like, you said, Madison, that karma's a bitch. And Madison's like, I guess I just kind of meant it in the sense of how he traded Taylor. And now he's getting a dose of what it feels like. And Shep was like, what was your reaction to Whitney saying you weren't rich or famous enough for her? And Shep's like, yeah, I think so. Honestly, we were on a boat in the Bahamas and she pointed at a house and said, like, I want you to buy me that house. And I was like, honey, I can't afford that house. That's like, and then after she went to a Forbes conference, Shep says, and she had this great business idea. It was like women's health consult online. And we were texting FaceTime and she was like, I found funding. It turns out the guy was a Denver Bronco. And he came into the conference with a big black, and he's like stuttering on the word. And he says, credit card of Amex. But Andy, of course, went big black, and everybody's like, whoa, little moments. Andy got really excited there for a second. So we're laughing. But I love when Shep, who is a wealthy man who has not had to have like a real job because of investments his parents made for him and then he made for himself. So he's always said that he has not had to like do the 9 to 5 like a lot of us have in our lives. But he says, I only have a platinum Amex. But like Shep, you don't cry poor. He's not poor, but he's not Denver Broncos rich. But anyways, Shep goes, I know somebody on the Denver Broncos, and her husband is a Denver Bronco coach. And so I got the whole skinny. And yeah, he apparently got relegated to the practice squad. So now Shep, because of Southern Charm, this poor football player who's richer than Shep, got relegated to the practice squad just because of Shep's stupid fucking freckled lips text. Shep, do not hurt other people's careers. This is about women's health. Let's get this app going, man. And he said, have you spoken with Scheana since the show has aired? And Shep's like, yeah, she texted me the other day and she said, you are sharing intimate details of our relationship. And she said, I didn't sign up for this. And I was like, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. Yeah, you did, you know? And Molly's like, yeah, you were searching for this on Raya. And then Andy goes, let's bring Scheana out. And it's that classic joke that Andy does, but it's such a waste because we should have brought Scheana out. Like, if it's a budget thing, let the audience know, man. I would pitch in some of my Delta Sky miles. Let's get her over here because it would be so good for the show. Like, come on, we can have the best conversation. This could go from a 2-part reunion to a 3-part reunion. Andy says, would you still want to settle down and get married? Is that something that you still want if you met the right person? And he says, yes. What are you looking for? And Austin points at Molly. And Shep goes, someone who doesn't really need me. Like, I like that. I like that. I like that. It's like somebody that leaves me alone doesn't need me at all because they're stupid. It's so funny. And he says, Molly and Shep got a lot of audience response when it came to your friendship. She's age appropriate and intelligent. She's smart. She's beautiful. You two seem to have a genuine connection. And Shep was like, I thought I was in another relationship at the time. And Molly's like, exactly. And I wasn't trying to throw myself at Shep. No, the show was trying to throw you at Shep. Molly says, I'm trying to be a friend. And, if things go, then like, well, and Andy's like, well, you shared a kiss at the finale. And they're like, well, did you hang out after? It's like, yeah, we might have hung out after. Yeah, we might have hung out after. Yeah. So obviously they did the deed and they're both admitting to that. And Andy goes, did Shep leave you satisfied? And Molly says, I mean, I had fun. Which isn't like it means she had the O. It just means like, yeah, like he got breakfast the next morning, maybe. I don't know. Like, is Shep a gentle lover? Do we even care? And then Andy goes, why didn't anything happen after that? And they said, oh, yeah, one more. So I think they hung out like one more time. And Shep says, I wasn't even around for most of the fall. I rented out my house. I wasn't in Charleston. And then they asked, do you think these two could be a love match? And Madison's like, everybody's like, this version of Shep, yes. But it makes me a little nervous because, like, I would kill you if you hurt her. I love her so much. And, that's something that keeps coming up. Would you want any of your friends to date Shep? Sleeping with Shep is one thing, but would you want them to ever be in a committed relationship with Shep? I think that the resounding answer would be no. And it shouldn't be someone on the show, even though it would make for better television if it was somebody on the show. Am I correct in thinking that? Andy says, Molly, do you deserve somebody with a different track record than Shep? And she's like, listen, we all do weird shit. If I see someone actively like working to better themselves, I think that's more than a lot of what most people would do. And I appreciate that. Molly, why are you putting like 1 foot in, 1 foot out? I mean, maybe both feet in, like already making excuses for somebody that is actively not interested in you. So we leave that Shep thing right there, even though I think we could have done a full episode just on that. Now we go to the JT and Venita saying there were whispers after filming Wrapped that the two of you were hooking up and that you were a couple. Who on the couch knew about JT and Venita, Andy asks. And Rodrigo, Molly raises his hand, their hand, Madison raises her hand. And he says, I want to talk about when the trailer for season 10 dropped, Andy says. There was an overwhelming response that the Venita and JT relationship was fake or manufactured. And Venita, what is your response to that? And Venita goes, they could fuck off. And Andy's like, okay. JT, what's your response to that? And JT's like, here we go. It was real. I mean, she's lovely in every single possible way. I cannot speak highly enough of Venita. And he says, you said multiple times over the season, Venita, that there was a side of JT or Jarrett that your friends don't see. And Venita goes, that's the cool, calm, and collected. I'm not about to just act out because I'm with my group of friends. I'm going to fully be myself. That's what I got. And then he says, that's his yummy side. Okay, that's another penalty for Andy Cohen, $50 for that. Even Austin makes a face going, ugh, what? Ugh, the yummy side of JT? Nobody should have a yummy side, not in public. Andy says, Leva, when did you realize something was going on between them? And she goes, well, I picked up on their chemistry on the bus to Madison's party at the beginning of the season. And that's what Rodrigo said in our interview as well. And Madison's like, I don't know, maybe they were banging it out. And they talked about, did it happen? Did they bang out? And JT goes, no, we didn't bang it out. And Madison's like, well, what did you do? And JT's like, I'll let the lady speak on behalf of that. And Shep looks really excited about this. And Venita just says, we made out. We made out. And Andy goes, I have to ask, with all due respect, why weren't you guys fucking? Andy Walter Cronkite, why weren't you fucking? And Venita says, we were just trying to take it one day at a time. That's, And Madison's like, yeah, you got to test drive it. You got to test drive it. And he says, one of the biggest surprises was when you brought up your girlfriend to Venita after she invited you over to her house. And we have that scene about being attracted to her, but she has a girlfriend. And Andy says, why keep your girlfriend a secret? And JT goes, oh, well, she was, we knew about, it's like something, he's getting flustered. It's like something doesn't, because I had a girlfriend off camera. I had that girlfriend. And Venita says, I knew that you had a girlfriend off camera and you still chose to come to my house, eat dinner that I prepped for you. And JT's like, well, it was a really tricky situation because you were one of my best friends. So when you went over to her house, Andy says, you thought it was like, okay, my friend's making me dinner. JT's like, well, I don't want to just lock it in because I'm human. I'm a hot-blooded male. Of course, it's like, you see steam coming out of JT's head. I said, afterwards, I said, you know what? I have a girl. I'm sorry. And Venita goes, but you told me you had a girlfriend. I'm sorry. Or did I know the whole time? And she goes, you knew the whole time. And I told you because I was kind of like, I got to go. And she's like, come on. He's like, what? I'm being real. Don't do me like that, Venita says. And Austin's like, that's outrageous. I can't believe that. Andy says, JT, last year in this group, you performed a fuckboy exorcism on Austin. And JT goes, it worked. He's happy. Look at him. And Andy goes, well, it seems like the fuckboy went into you because you were behaving like a fuckboy. And Austin's like, have the tables have turned. And Venita's like, fucking it. Uno reversed. And Molly's like, who's the fuckboy now, JT? Or Sally's like, who's the fuckboy now? And JT goes, I didn't fuck her, so I don't think I am. And there's intense music as everybody's making faces. So dumb. Anyways, everybody's reacting to that comment. And Madison's like, that is fucked up. That is fucked up. So they're all saying they didn't know about the girlfriend the first couple months of filming. And they're like, Austin, would JT qualify for a fuckboy exorcism? Austin says, I think that Venita is trying to give him one. But I just can see that she has like as much as she's like, she has residual feelings for JT. And Venita says, I'm just empathetic. And Andy says, well, after Southern Charm premiered, you made a big public post on Instagram, kind of like announcing your relationship. And we see this post and saying you are girlfriend and boyfriend. And JT's like, And Sally's saying, your girlfriend was upset. I saw her commenting on photos on Instagram 2 weeks prior, tagging Venita. You are all going to know the man that this is, the man that he truly is. Your girlfriend, your current girlfriend, Sally says, she was commenting negative things. And JT's like, no, that was after filming. That was after filming because we weren't together at that time. This is after I was actually seeing Venita at that time. Leva's like, you should break down the timeline. And Venita goes, okay, I come back from Europe in September and you let me know that you and that girl were no longer together. Then after that, you and I are going out on dates. damn near every single day. Like we were working on trying to figure out if we were going to actually be boyfriend and girlfriend. And then super teaser drops, the super teaser for the show. And she's in my fucking DMs, JT, calling me a goddamn rat. And I say to you, do something about this, JT. And you say to me, I can't do anything about that. And that's when my brain went, oh shit, I got to pump the brakes. Remember when I texted you, I was like, I just think I needed a second, right? And JT's like, and then you ghosted me for a week. You ghosted me hard and it hurt my feelers. And Venita's like, that's embarrassing, JT. And Annie's like, sounds like you might have deserved it. Venita says, I told you, JT, I needed time. If you wanted to talk to me, you should have said, hey, Venita, I know you need time, but I really want us to talk because I don't like what's happening between us. And he goes, I did. And she goes, you didn't. I did. And he goes, do you want me to grab my phone? And JT's like, please do. And Venita gets up. She walks out of the middle of the set where I don't even know if there's a door back there. And she's going to grab her phone. But you see like Venita take off for that phone. She's walking backstage, highly dramatic. The producer's like, she went out the back. Let's grab her. And she's like, I need my phone. It's in a pink case. I need my phone. And somebody hands it to her. She grabs it and she just keeps on walking towards the set. And so we're going to figure this out in part 2. And this is the girl that sent nasty messages, his current girlfriend, right? So Venita is walking back on stage and Andy is like, uh-oh. Andy's like, this is about to get a whole lot worse, which means it's going to get a whole lot better for us, the audience. So that is part 1 of our Southern Charm reunion. What did you guys think? It was good, right? It was good. Listen, I wanted to get into the early Southern Charm of it all, but we have gone long on this. But I think this was a fantastic episode. My thanks to Rod. That was so great to meet him. Once again, just listen to that interview because you can tell he has real relationships with those people. It's really up to the show to like kind of, see how they're going to work those people into the show. But I really enjoyed speaking with him. I hope you enjoyed this. Go listen to my Summer House recap, which I put out last night, and listen to all the episodes we did last week. It was really good. And then on Patreon, I'm doing a breakdown of Justin Bieber, Hailey Bieber, and Selena Gomez's relationship. Maybe I'll put the other Southern Charm stuff over there. But I hope you're having the best weekend ever, and thanks for allowing me to be a part of it. And remember, Monday, Pop Culture Roundup. And that's it. Woo, boppa doo, boppa dee dee dee. Bye, guys.